However, if you are not, then we know we have some work to do. We have some goals to write down and some tangible steps to take, right? Okay. Anyone having issues finding their credit score? Okay, good, good. All right, next slide. Okay. So the last time we spoke about the financial life cycle, which is income, expenses, savings, and wealth accumulation. For now, we're going to focus on the income and expenses because we want to make sure that we have our household budget down packed. And when I say that, we're going to be tracking the spendings so that your budget can be as accurate as possible. And then when you do your next budget, it's actually going to serve as a guideline for the rest of the year, okay? So we're going to focus more on the income aspect, where this income is coming from, what can we do to increase our income, how can we manage the income that we receive. And then the expenses, understanding every penny that goes out of your household, right? And so that is the only way that we're going to see the leakage and plug the holes and make some great decisions, some changes, some adjustments so that we can all be in the green, okay? So has everyone completed their budget? Are working on their budget? I see some mixed, come on. Yes, no, yes, working on it? Okay, as long as you're working on it. And like I said, it does take time because you really have to be honest through the process, okay? Everything needs to be listed. So we'll keep going. Next slide. Sure.
When it comes to the budgeting that you're working on right now, do you have like a sheet that you gave out or anything to work us through it?
Okay, I did not provide a sheet because the budget is such a personal thing. And so I did show on the first slide what a budget looks like in terms of a template. But you can certainly go on to many websites, Google sites, and you can find a template that works best for you. Your household budget may look different from someone else's, but I typically want you to, and you'll see it in the slides, want you to have the basic things. Now, on top should be the income, right? Because you have to be able to see exactly the funds that you're working with. And when I say income, wages earned, residual income coming in, anything that is coming your way, whether it's disability, payments from anywhere, you want to include that as income. Now, if you want to break that income up, if it's not wages earned, and say, okay, this income is not income that I'm counting on, and that is going to investments or savings accounts or emergency funds, then you can do that. But on the top, straight off the top should be your income. You have to know what's coming into your home, okay? But don't overthink the budget. It's really just that simple. You can go into a regular Excel sheet, and even if you type in, they'll pull up, you can see various budget sheets. But do what is comfortable for you and that makes sense for you when you read it, okay? It doesn't have to make sense for everyone else, okay? So the introduction, so the importance of budgeting, and again, you're gonna constantly hear me say this, the importance of budgeting is understanding your cash flow. I find a lot of times that's where people come in short. They don't understand the cash flow of their household, okay? Budgeting is a fundamental part of managing personal or business finances. Understanding your cash flow is a key aspect of that process. You cannot move forward with anything and make an informative decision if you don't understand the cash flow. Budgeting and cash flow management provide clarity and control over your finances, reducing stress. That's a huge part. We talked about that last week. A lot of times we can't get sleep because we are wondering about the bills and all the things that are coming in that we're unable to pay or we don't know how to manage, right? And so it increases your financial security in the long run. And that's what we all want, financial security, financial freedom, okay? Financial freedom gives yourselves what? We talked about it, options. You want to be able to give yourself as many options as possible, okay? Budgeting is a proactive step toward a more stable, well-planned financial future. So we don't want to be reactive in this process because the reactive methods tend to be the areas where we're cleaning up. And so it doesn't serve us in the long run. But if we're proactive, we know what's coming. If we decide that we have run into an emergency, we already know what our emergency reserves look like. We already know if we plan on purchasing a big purchase, if we have the money to be able to do that, if we have the credit capacity to be able to do that. And so being proactive serves us far way into the future than not. Okay? Next up. Any questions so far? Okay. So, like I said, we talked about the tracking and income of expenses. So, I'm not going to go into details on this, but I know that Pastor Reese will be sending the slide out. So, I put a little bit more information into the PowerPoint so you can have it for your reference, and you can look back through once you're doing your budget. So, the ones that I really want to focus on, yes, we're tracking our income and expenses, and that's the gist of the budgeting, right? Tracking income versus your expenses. Well, I want to be able for you to get to a point where you are forecasting. So identifying potential shortfalls. The forecasting method is necessary, and it speaks to you being able to understand what that looks like way in advance. Just like I said, you can tell, okay, this is my emergency fund. If we plan, if an emergency comes up and I have to travel, you know you have the money in reserve. And so forecasting allows for you to cut unnecessary costs and finding ways to increase income to avoid running into financial trouble. Okay, so it's really good to get to a point where you can forecast out at least 2 years. Okay. Um, Having the budget also helps you avoiding debt and manage existing debt. That's a huge part of budgeting, right? Because you cannot budget and not look at the debt that's in place. You have to see your debt, you have to know what you owe, and it allows for you to be able to manage it and get rid of the unnecessary debt. Notice I said unnecessary. Some of the debt you're going to have, your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, your basic needs, you're going to have those debts, right? But the unnecessary debts that you want to get rid of, it's the high interest credit card debts. It's the, anything that is really hurting you and keeping you up at night, okay? So yeah, a good budget helps you to avoid relying on credit cards or loans to cover everyday expenses. I literally had this conversation the other day about credit cards, and understanding how to utilize credit cards in a responsible way. A lot of times we get credit cards where we are economically. People are struggling. A lot of people are struggling. They're trying to make ends meet. Everything has increased. Rent has gone up. Food has gone up, but your income may not have. And so now you have a gap, right? How do we fill that gap? A lot of people are leaning on credit cards, which I understand that, in survival mode, but that should not be a norm, right? Especially when our credit cards have APRs of 29.99% and 32%, which they can get even up to 35% at this point, which is crazy. Okay. Um, so yeah, we want to avoid debt and manage debt, and the only way we can do that is if we understand what our budget looks like, what our income and expenses look like. Okay. Next slide. Um, the budget also allows us to set financial goals. So understanding your cash flow is vital to setting realistic goals. By knowing how much discretionary income you have, you can set achievable goals. So part of the homework was to actually write down 5 dreams. Did anyone do that? Yes? Thank you. Okay. Do you mind sharing at least 1 or 2? If not, that's okay. Use the microphone.
So one or two of them would be contributing more into retirement savings.
Awesome.
And then, as you know, we're at the point where kids are in college or about to start college.
Yes.
So funding college education is also a big
Okay.
goal.
Okay. So those are amazing goals, and those are goals that can happen. Now, how do we put tangible steps to these goals, right? First, you have to know what your income and expenses look like, hence the budget. Everything is going to go back to the budget. You can not answer that question. You don't know if you have additional funds to pour into the 401k. You don't know if you have funds to put aside for college education, joining 529 plans, putting aside different things for college education. You don't know. The only way you will know is if you have your budget. So once you've done your budget and see what's remaining, then you can make an informed decision, all right? So it definitely allows for us to set financial goals and achieve them and put tangible steps to them. Remember I said write your dreams? Take 5 of those dreams, make them your goals. At least pick 3 of those, turn them into goals because they're tangible, right? And then once we have those 3, list out the tangible steps needed to make that happen. And majority of the time, I guarantee you're going to have to refer back to that budget. So if your budget is not done, it's going to be hard to make these things happen because you can't be honest with yourselves. Okay? You have a question or a statement?
After looking at my budget,
Yes.
I realized that I need to get rid of some of my credit card.
Wonderful.
What I started by calling, say for instance, American Express,
Mm-hmm.
to decrease the interest rate that they're charging.
Wonderful.
I didn't get much further with them because
Okay.
they didn't want to decrease it.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to the gentleman on the line that no bank is giving 3% interest.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, for you to be charging 29.99% is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
So I start by just paying them off.
Okay.
Then I went on to, I had finished with Home Depot. I finished with Lowe's. I finished with Kohl's.
Mm-hmm.
I finished with Macy's. And then I start calling Children Place
Mm-hmm.
because I bought a lot of stuff from them
Mm-hmm.
for business. And when I called them up, I realized that I was going to bargain with them, but then I realized that they're the one who owed me. So I started from doing that.
Right.
I can't do retirement anymore because I'm already retired,
Right.
and I feel as though I did as much as I could when I was working.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with that
Okay.
part. But my goal now is, then I start trying to refinance my car. I did a whole lot of stuff this week.
Wonderful.
So when
You
I
were
tried
working. I love it.
when I tried to refinance my car, I went to the credit union.
Mm-hmm.
The-
Okay.
The,
just
rate
like
is
we
much
talked.
much lower.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I would have saved $200 and about $3 a month going
Yes.
going through the credit union.
Wow. And let me just ask you this. When you received your loan for the car, you went through the dealership?
I went through the dealership.
Big mistake, right? I said that the last time, right?
Right.
Big mistake.
And then after I spoke with the lady, then that's when I call you up.
Mm-hmm.
I call you back to see what should I do. And when we went over everything, you said just borrow the money from yourself, pay off for the car,
Mm-hmm.
and then every month,
You pay it back.
same credit union, let them withdraw X amount in the credit union from the bank. Like I would be paying, say for instance, I would be paying $800 a month.
You became your own bank.
I became my own bank
Absolutely.
now.
Mhm.
So every month now, the credit union will just withdraw from my checking account $500, which will go to a savings.
Right.
So I'm paying back
High
myself.
yield savings.
Yeah. So
High
I'm,
yield, right?
yeah.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm paying back myself now.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Give her a round of applause. Okay. I love it. Sure.
How to use the
Okay.
microphone. All right. You just gave me an idea because I've been thinking myself about refinancing my vehicle
Okay.
and knowing where I am right now when it comes to my credit, which
Okay.
actually dropped my credit score when I got my car about 2.5, 3 years now.
2.5, 3 years ago. Okay.
So I'm like, okay, if I refinance, would it put me back 3 years when I
Mhm.
could be done in literally a year and a half?
It's so, and I'm glad that you said she gave you an idea, and I want you guys to understand what may work for her may not work for everyone, right?
Correct.
So I'm glad that you are aware of that part.
Mhm.
And so I know in speaking with you earlier, you have other goals. Do you mind if I mention?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, like home ownership and things like that.
Yes.
Because you are looking to go into home ownership, I would not refinance in this moment.
Okay.
And because you don't want an extra brand new loan,
Correct.
right? Because when you are looking to go into home ownership, they're looking at the longevity, the history of your credit. And so now that's why they say when you're thinking about buying a home, don't go do any big purchases. Even though you've had that vehicle, it's almost as if you're buying a vehicle, right?
Okay.
It's a big purchase. So I would look at that first and then see where you are by speaking with a lender. And I was telling you, we will have someone on site speaking with a lender. Figure out that first, have a plan in place for home ownership. And if it gives you a couple of years where you have to work on some things, then I would say, okay, that's your opportunity to go ahead because then you will then have the loan for a couple of years in terms of refinance to be able to then be ready for home ownership, right? But if it's going to interrupt that process and that is your goal is to be a homeowner,
Yes.
you already have the vehicle. Hold off.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm glad
So
I did
every
that.
situation is different and you have to understand sometimes when you're speaking with people, they're not giving you all the because people tell you what they want you to know,
Correct.
right? And so they may not be comfortable sharing all the details, but you have to really assess you and get all the information. Perfect example, home ownership. Get the information so you can make an informed decision. Don't talk yourself through the process because you're not the lender and you don't know what the lenders are looking for, right? And you're not the loan officer, you don't know what they're looking for. The underwriting process, you don't understand that. And so you have to make sure that you get that information first before you dive into a brand new loan because it's going to be considered a start over. It's a new loan.
Right.
Okay? So hold off.
And I'm glad that that was brought up because that was going to be a question of mine.
Mhm.
So I'm glad I did not
Yeah.
refinance because I know my future goal is to get a home within the 5 years time,
Mhm.
maybe sooner.
Yes.
God willing.
Mhm.
So and it actually brought me to where last week, even when I found the class,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I'm in the right steps because I actually lowered my cell phone bill,
Mhm.
bargaining with with AT&T,
I love a bargain.
and
Mhm.
I also lowered my car insurance
Love it.
by $80 a month.
Love it.
So that was
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
good progress. So now that money, I'm putting that into savings
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
So that is going towards a savings account that I'm not even touching.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, now, and I've heard of high yield savings.
Yes.
Now the thing is to find something that works best for me.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. You're on the right track. I love it. So I just wanted to touch bases on something you said about when you do your budget, you're taking into account all your bills, right? So your bills need to be also your insurances, and that is your home insurance, your whether you have rental insurance, your car insurance, even health insurance, right? You want to see every year they automatically renew. You get the thing in the mail, it's automatically renewing. You get an email, it's automatically renewing. And these companies receive your business for free, right? Because you just can't be bothered to say, I need to find out if there's other places that will do better. Are you doing a comparison every year? I don't give my business for free, especially when it comes to homeowners insurance. I look at it every year and I do an assessment and I reach out to other companies and see if I have to change company and change it back every year, then that's what I'm going to do. But you have to look at that because a lot of times they also go up on you and you don't even realize because you're not paying attention. And a lot of times people don't realize until their mortgage go up, right? And your escrow is not enough, and you're wondering why is the escrow not enough, and then you realize it's the insurance. Yes, taxes go up, but the insurance also went up, and so you want to make sure you're shopping around. Do not give people your business for free. Okay, shop around, and it's okay. It's strictly business. Cut ties. I don't care if that's a person you've known for 10 years. Business is business. How is this going to impact you financially? So that's also a leakage that you can plug. Okay, so I love that you said that you were able to save $80. Think about 80 times 12, right?
Well, times 6.
6 months. You know what I mean? That's a significant savings. So I love that you're able to now move that into another area, whether it's a savings or possibly save for your dream home, you know. Yes. You had a question, sister? You had a question? Hmm. Or a statement?
Thank you. You made a great point when you mentioned that one person's situation may not necessarily be the other person's. But just to, and you answered greatly, but just to add to the last part of
Sure.
Madeline's
Hmm.
question, because I did the same thing that Sister Ingrid did back in the days when I had car payment. Um, you have the option when you go to the credit union, if it's in your long-term goal, that just, what she said is key first. What I say secondary, she's right. But if you go to, you have the choice whether you want to do a 2 year, if you don't want to go back 5 years.
Yes.
So you have the option. Because a lot of times what you have left on the car, if you do 2 years, the interest rate is what matters. So you do have that option to do that. And I like what you said about the home insurance. Even with property taxes, we need to make sure we're doing property tax exempt.
Exempt.
Yeah,
Yep.
we need to make sure we file for that, make sure we get those discounts.
Mhm.
Anywhere we can get it, please take it.
Yes. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to focus on, yes, we want to it creates flexibility, right? Life is unpredictable. You know, we found that out in 2020. Everyone found that out, right? And a lot of people were able to get through and make it through. Some people sank, you know. A lot of businesses went out of business 2020. So it allows for flexibility, allows for you to be able to handle those up and down markets. So your budget will show you those things, right? Improving your financial health, regularly budgeting and analyzing your cash flow helps you to build healthier financial habits. That is the key, consistency. So having a visual on your cash flow will allow for you to be consistent in the process. All of us have bad habits, right? How many of you buy lunch at least 3 times a week? How many of you buy coffee or stop and buy a little snack? I see hand raised with the coffee. The coffee is the biggest culprit. When you could just get your to-go cup and make it and go, you know, buying water, you know, as little as we think that these are all leakage, little things that we can plug in. So we create financial habits that we chuck it up to. Oh, okay, I'm just being comfortable. Oh, you know, and we don't think anything of it. But by the time you add up that coffee every day and add like a little muffin to it, you know, it makes a difference weekly, monthly, yearly. You know, so having a understanding will help to improve your habits. And we want to get into the habit of having good doing good, making good decisions, having the mindset to kind of flow with that intentionally, okay? So preventing lifestyle inflation. This is a big one. I put it in red because I think a lot of people don't think about this. Um, you have a job, a steady income, your income increases. What do you do with that income when you get that raise or you get that bonus? I know it's kind of small, and I do apologize. You having trouble reading it? Okay. Okay. So it says preventing lifestyle inflation. All right. And so as your income increases, it's easy to start spending more. By understanding your cash flow and sticking to your budget, you can avoid the temptation of overspending. So you've created your budget right now. You understand the income to expense, and then you get a raise. A lot of people adjust to that raise and they back to square one of saying, oh, I don't have any money. What am I doing? Da, 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 da. If you already had your budget and income already mapped out, and that raise or that bonus that you receive, whether quarterly or Christmas time or holidays, whatever that looks like, should not be considered into that budget because that's new money. So that new money needs to be moved somewhere else, right? How can we allocate those funds to investments, to savings, to build up our emergency fund? We have to really utilize those funds wisely as opposed to counting on that and then spending. Tax time is a huge part. People get lump sums during taxes, which that's a whole nother conversation, you know. But you get huge lump sums, and they count on that every year to bring them back afloat. And then after that money is finished, then they're right back to square one. You have to do your budget so that when these funds come in, you have the flexibility to allocate them in a way that is beneficial beneficial to you and your financial growth, right? These funds should not, you should not be codependent on them, okay? Any questions about that? All right, next slide. Okay. So, as you are building your budget, I wanted you to kind of see what that looks like on paper, okay? So, your budget should reflect your needs, your savings, and we all have wants. Your wants may be different from your wants, different from my wants, but we all have wants, right? And so 80% of your budget should reflect your needs. And so just in case you are confused about what the needs are, right? I've created that house. The foundation of the house is your income. That house cannot stand up unless you have a strong income, right? You have to have some money coming in. That's where people run into problems. You don't have enough money coming in. So we have to figure out, where can we get money? What can we do? Do we increase our education? Do we get a little side job? Do we want to get some passive income? What can we do to increase our income? And for how long is that income available to you? So that's the first step, right? That's why I said when you do your budget, your income is at the top, because that is the foundation of everything, okay? And then we want to secure our walls of our home, because without having a roof over our head, our rent and our mortgage, that should be the first thing you pay. Nothing else matters. That should be the first thing that comes out of your income every month. Because if you do not have a roof over your head, what? What's going to happen? Where are you going to stay? Under the bridge, right? And it's sad, but it's true, you know? So that should be your first. I don't care what anyone says. If they want to borrow money, your house should be taken care of first, right? And so we want to make sure you are paying your rent and your mortgage, and that's why it's the roof, okay? Then we have our gas, water, electricity, your bills, okay? So you want to make sure you pay that. You need gas, you need water, you need electricity, unless you have candles. So you want to make sure you pay those. And then I put transportation on the other side, because depending on where you live, I know a lot of people from New York, transportation is not a big deal in terms of gas, but they need their monthly Metro card, they need their, their train pass, things like that. Wherever you are, you need some type of transportation. Your gas, make sure your car has maintenance on it, your oil change, things like that, because if you do not have your vehicle, how are you going to get to the work? That's going to stop you from creating a foundation for yourself. So you have to add transportation to your budget. Groceries. I put it inside the house, right? Because sometimes you can go to food pantries. Yes, we need groceries. Yes, we need food. But that's kind of a gray area where I'd rather pay my rent and my mortgage, because I know I can go get some food from some friends, some church, some pantry, somewhere, Just like with clothing, you can go to, the cheapest place and get clothing. And you do have to have clothing. Clothing is a necessity, because especially where you live, you have to change for the weather. If you have young children or grandchildren or whomever, they grow rather quickly. This season's clothes is not going to fit them next season. So that is a necessity. When you go to the doctor, the first thing that they look is see if you are dressed appropriately. That's a measurement of mental health, of health care, of maintenance, to make sure you are dressed appropriately. When you go to work, you have to dress a certain type of way. Doesn't mean that you have to go buy a $500 outfit, but you have to be well-groomed. So I didn't add it on there, but that's going to be inside the house, because those are great areas that you can kind of go around depending on where you are, okay? But you certainly can't get around not having a roof over your head. That's a must, okay? And then the next part is 10% savings. So as you are getting paid, a lot of people get direct deposit. That 10%, you can allocate that off the top, so you don't even have anything to do with it in terms of seeing the movement of that money. Go into your portals. Now they used to have human resources. I'm aging myself, but it used to have go into human resources and have fill out the paperwork. You don't have to do that. You can literally log into your portal and make all your adjustments to where you want it to go. And I remember when I had direct deposit, I had like so many different accounts, going to credit union, going to this, going to that. I had so many areas of allocating the funds because I know the only area that I'm concerned about is my checking account where the bills, where my 80% is going, right? Because that checking account is just for my 80%. And we'll talk about that more when we go into the banking, how to break it up so that we are not cross banking, right? But 10% needs to go to your investment, contributions, emergency savings. And if you can do more because your wants are lower than 10%, by means, go ahead and do more, okay? And so the 10% of wants, some people like to go on nice vacations. I like a nice vacation myself. I love to go to Jamaica. You know, dining out, okay? There's nothing wrong with that, but can you afford it? Okay? Luxury items. A lot of people like to treat themselves, you know. They had a hard week. I'm going to treat myself to that end of week item. That's okay. Gym memberships. Those are all luxury because you could run around the community. How many of us, when you did your budget, you realize you have a gym membership and never goes to the gym? I'm gonna need you to close that membership. It looks good and it's nice to say, in theory, I'm gonna go to the gym. It's 2025, you know. But if you are spending, and the gym is not, they're expensive now. They're like over $200 sometimes, right? And so if you're spending that on a monthly basis, I need you to close it immediately. Gyms are expensive. I think the cheapest one now is Planet Fitness, but a lot of people like the Orange Theory and those gyms, they're like over $200. Yeah. Your room downstairs. The cheapest one is go for a walk in the community, okay? Just walk around, put on your headphones and walk. Yes, Dahima.
So that's actually really funny you mentioned the gym membership is because with my work schedule being what it has been, I haven't been able to get to the gym. And I am a member of Orange Theory. So I have like a corporate discount, but it's still not cheap. My see now you're my business. And we're not gonna do that. But it is pretty significant. It's over $100 a month.
It's a lot of
It's
money.
a lot of money, and the workouts are great, and that's for the unlimited. And at one point, I was going 7 days a week. I loved it.
Yes.
But just with my work schedule now, it's just not as feasible as it was at one point. And so that's actually something I was considering is I need to cancel my gym membership.
Consider no more.
I will be canceling my gym membership, and and I was thinking like, what will I do instead? And you know, they have like free workouts on YouTube, and I have done that for a while. That you can kind of utilize that, like for anybody who's thinking about that. Like if you have a gym membership that you're not actually utilizing, just go ahead and find a little workout on YouTube and
Yes.
do that instead in your living room, and that's free.
Yes. I love it. And they have the apps where you can get the free little 30-minute workouts and 20-minute workout. And so thank you for sharing, but
Yeah.
consider no more.
Even I actually had a Peloton membership, like just the app as well, and I do love that. And even they have free workouts where you don't have to have the membership as well. And I love their workouts. Their workouts are really, really great if you're wanting something a little bit more structured. But YouTube University is free.
Love it. Love you too. No, so she said that the app is free. So she's saying, and that's an alternative to paying for a gym membership. They have so many apps. They have YouTube. People post on social media now where they give you little 30-minute, 20-minute workouts that you can use. Use that same workout for 3, 4 days and then switch to another one, you know? And then in between, go for a walk and go for a jog. There's so many parks in the area. I guarantee you can find a nice park and go for a walk. You know, put on the headphones, get a conversation going. But I say that to say, that's a luxury. Now, can you afford that luxury? Okay, be real with yourselves. Yes, ma'am.
And for the senior citizens, you can go to the gym for free.
Yeah.
It's called Silver Sneakers,
Silver sneakers, yes.
and you can sign
It's
up for
at
that.
LA Fitness, I believe.
Yes. No, I'm looking at your mother. No, I'm looking at your mother. I think it's
60, no, it's 57?
57.
57.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
I was
So
looking
if
at
you're
your mom.
57 years old,
Yes.
you can actually, there's some areas where they do offer, it's called silver sneakers. They have some other names. Everyone, I think every gym or going to have different names for it. But they also have like, not the Boys and Girls Club, what's the community? The YMCA's and things. They have things for seniors, and for seniors, I believe the YMCA is 64 or 65 or something like that. I know it's like either in the 60s, but there's different things that you can find, and you'll be surprised at how much fun it is, especially when you meet people your age group and on the same level, and you take the journey together. So it's a great alternative, and we're using that so that you can find the leakage as you create your budget. So I'm glad that you found that that was an area where you can plug. So plug that immediately, please. Okay, so any questions about the budget so far? We have the idea and the concept. We just need to put it to action. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Can we put it to action real soon? Okay. Yes, ma'am. The mic?
Thank you for that. With the 10% savings, when you say investment contributions, are you referring to like 401k, or that is for a different?
So investments could
Topic.
be anything: 401k, IRAs, high yields, money market accounts, all those things, right? Contributions could be anything from if you want to give, you're giving offerings and things like that. Okay. A lot of people, that's part of their budget where they give on a monthly basis to tithes and offering, not-for-profit organizations. So that's part of, you want to build that in. Okay.
Quick question. Would you recommend that folks set up a different bank account just so they?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so when we talk
Sorry,
about
can you
that,
finish the question, Pastor?
Would you recommend setting up a different bank account so you have one to handle the 80% needs, have one to handle the savings, have one to handle the wants, so you're not kind of crossing over and losing track of how much you actually have for each different grouping?
sorry for cutting you off, but yes. We will dive into that for next session when we talk about the banking and how many different bank accounts that we definitely recommend you having. But absolutely, your needs should be in an account by itself, and usually that's a checking account because that's money that's going in and out. And so everything else you will structure in a way that it feeds directly into it, and we'll talk about those type of bank accounts that I recommend. So yes. Okay. Any other questions about this?
Yeah, have you ever heard about a CBL program? That's an investment program.
CBL program?
Mm-hmm. They said it's a community focused group where you have a traditional urban renewal and economical empowerment. So you invest your money, like you give like $5,000, and within 6 months you can get 25.
You lost? Yeah, batteries might have died.
Thank you. Okay, so it's not a.
You turned it off by accident.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. You can tell I'm not used to holding a mic, right? Okay, there we go. So it's not a susu. I have heard of it, and it's more like in the environmental type thing. So there's a lot of people that want to invest in the environment. And so what happens is then you have these, I'm going to use solar panels, for example. You have these companies that you can invest in, and you get a return on your money, but you have to let your money it operates similar to a CD, but they guarantee a percentage if you let it sit for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. I can find out more information, make sure we have more information on that, but a lot of times I find that people who are more environmentally aware, recycling companies, they tend to offer things like that, but it depends on the company, because then it's a thin line because it's not new. A lot of people are not aware of it, but it's not new. It's not a new concept of investment. But because some people haven't heard of it, then you have scammers who have kind of taken that on. So you have to be very careful with who you're investing. You have to do research on the company and making sure that you are getting proper guidance with that. So I would be careful with that. But it's not a new concept at all. But they have different names for it. But I have heard of it now that you've explained a little bit more what it is. But I think they have like 3 different names. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I will be prepared next time to answer that more in detail. Okay? Any? So there's different levels. Okay, so there's different levels of how you can invest, and so perfect example, you can invest in the actual product that they're using.
Maybe it is the battery after all.
Okay, it came up that time. But I will get more information and make sure we share that as well. But there's different levels and different ways that you can invest into that. Okay?
May I?
Yes.
I'm going to try to be quick. Sister Paulette, back to you. With the investment, when I tried to do investment at a younger age, I got into somebody who knows about investment. And I couldn't afford, I was always cheap, put it that way.
Frugal.
But I couldn't afford to lose anything. So I always tried to play the safe way. Everybody's different. If I wasn't playing the safe way, I could have made a good money on Viagra. Yes, when the stock came out. The stock market, yeah. But I was so scared of losing my money, so I didn't jump into that. I want to go the safe way. So I went the safe way with an investor guiding me. And it's called For Life. It's something for life. Lifetime 5.
Lifetime 5.
It's called Lifetime 5. Where you get into that Lifetime 5, it's mostly like the teachers knows about that a lot. Because after this man put me in there, I was still scared, so I went to see somebody else that confirmed that it was a good investment and all of that. So you have to be careful with your money, especially when you're over 50. You don't have no time to lose money. You know.
I love that, yeah.
So.
Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things when it comes to investments, again, whenever you meet with an investment manager, financial manager, and they go over your portfolio, the first thing that they're going to look, your age is a factor, right? They're going to look at your assets. They're going to ask you what is your income currently and what do you want to be able to utilize when you into your retirement years, right? And so age is a huge factor when it comes to retirement. The younger you are, the more aggressive you can be. Not so youthful, you want to be a little safe, but leave room to take some chances somewhere, okay? But it depends on what you have and what your goals are going into retirement, okay? A lot of times people don't have additional family, it's just them. Okay, what does that look like? You want to be able to live in an assisted living place. What does that cost? Appreciation for that. They look at all of that. So everything is going to be based on the individual. Okay? You had something you wanted to share?
I was going to ask you, I know I mentioned it a little earlier, but are you going to dive any deeper into like 401k, ROTH, or any of those?
Yes, in the banking session.
In the banking session. Okay, thank you.
So right now we're looking at the credit, understanding your credit score and the credit report. Everyone in here pulled their credit report. So I want you to really understand what that looks like, because we want to tackle anything that is not that great looking, right? Because the goal right now foundationally is to raise your credit score and to clean up your credit report if we need to do work in that area. And so here are the key factors that affect your credit score. Okay, the first one is your payment history. 30% of that is calculated into your credit score, okay? So your payment history, if you're late, if you are always late, that's a major thing, you know? If you are on time, we want to be on time. We want to make sure that that 30% is reflecting wonderfully. So your payment history is 35%. Your credit utilization is 32%. So your credit utilization really is how much of that credit you are using. So perfect example, if you have a card, that credit card for $5,000 approved, and you are using, you know, $3,000 of that, that's way higher than the suggested 30%. You want to keep your utilization at 30%. I recommend if you stay safe at the 25%, perfect example, 5,000 at 25% of that is only $1,250. Okay, so you want to make sure you're making sure you're keeping that down. So look at your credit cards right now, and when you're looking through your budget, and see where you are in the utilization, because that's 30%. That feeds into your credit to debt ratio. Okay, so try to get them down, pay them down as much as possible, and I'll give you strategies at the end to try to pay down that debt or pay it off. All right, the length, yes.
Let's say, for example,
Talking to the mic.
whenever I use my credit card,
Yes.
sometimes use it today, pay it tomorrow. Do I have to wait for it to reflect on the account for it to be beneficial?
I would suggest waiting for it to reflect. Now you have your statement closing date and your payment due date. I typically say to pay it at least a week or two prior to your statement closing date, because that's when it's reported to the credit bureau. And if your objective is to increase your credit score, right, to increase that number, you want to make sure that it's reporting on a positive every month. And so depending on the type of credit card, I'm going to use American Express for example. American Express, you spend $1,000 on there. Then you have your closing date, and then you have your minimum payment. Some people will say, okay, let me hit my $500 prior to the due date, and then the other $500 prior to the closing date. So people will hit it twice for the month, and that will help you a great deal. But when you are, it's like you're doing snapshots, it doesn't really help you. And so if you, so you have your payment due date, and then you have your statement closing date, okay? They're all reflected within that cycle for that monthly cycle. And so if you have $1,000 that you've charged on the first of the month, and then your due date is probably like the 16th, I'm gonna say, right? You wanna at least maybe a week before pay like $500 prior, and then your statement due date may be on the 30th. Then you want to pay the other $500 before, maybe a week before the statement due date. And that way, when it's reported, at the end, you'll see a 0 for the statement period. It's going to be reported that you have charged, yes, but you also have paid off a 0 balance. So it raises, it helps feeds into your credit score in terms of your utilization. Okay? So that's how you manage your utilization. That 30% is so easy to manage, but it's easy to manage if you have the money to pay. And that's where a lot of people run into the issue. You are not using the credit card responsibly. They charge and they pay the bare minimum. So you charge $1,000 and say the minimum payment is $60. However, the interest may be about what? I'm gonna say 24%, and sometimes higher, but I'm gonna give you a conservative 24%, you know, and if you're paying $60, that's not even enough to cover the interest that's coming back on there. So now you've added interest every month, and so now that $1,000 has increased, even though you paid $60. Then next month you pay $60, it's still going up because the interest, and that's how the cycle continues. So before you know it, that $1,000 is like $2,500 because of the interest that's added onto there, and you're barely making enough payment to even combat the interest that's being added on a monthly basis.
Plus interest on the interest.
Right. So perfect example, $1,000, and say you get like $82 interest. Now it's $1,082. So next month the interest is on $1,082. Okay, and that's where the problem comes in that people don't realize. Okay, but the responsible way of doing it is to hit it half prior to the payment due date, and the other half prior to your statement closing date. So by the end of the statement, you have a zero balance, and then it's reported into your utilization.
What if you hit it all at once?
It's okay, but the goal is to increase, and so you want to show that you have a steady way of making your payments, because sometimes when you hit something and you hit it too fast, it may sink your credit score by a point or two. Okay. So that's what I was saying with Sister Morrison. She was paying off some things. I said, well, don't pay it off all in full, especially if it's a large sum. Like, break it up a little bit to give you some longevity in that utilization. Okay? All right, any other questions? Okay. The next part is your length of credit history, which is 15%. This is important. I think a lot of times people get confused by this, so I gave an example here. Your length of credit history is the length of time that you can show a strong credit history, right? And so a lot of times they'll say, oh, I wasn't approved. They say my credit history wasn't long enough. I've had this credit card or I've had this loan for 20 years. Yes, but it's not just that. They're looking at everything. And so when you look at your credit report, look at all your credit and see the length of time and add them. So perfect example, I have 3 different. So the first one is 15 years, second one is 5 years, and the third is 7. They add them together and you get 27 years. Some people stop there and say, hey, I have a length of time of 27 years. That's not true. It's the median. So they divide it by the 3, and your length of time is 9 years. Some loans, depending on what you're going for, whether it's starting out with business loans or even mortgage loan for investment property, whatever that looks like, they require at least sometimes 10 to 15 years of credit history. Okay, so in this instance, one may think I have 27 years or 15 years looking at the longest one, but that's not the case. It's 9 years of credit history. So also be careful when you are opening new credit cards and new loans, because now that's going to dip into that median number. Okay, it's going to change that 9 years because now we have to add that into the amounts. Okay? So this is an area that a lot of people get tripped up on. Be careful with this. And that's 15%, your length of credit history. And a lot of times they do require you to have a longer. You need?
So question, using the example you have up there, if you were to close that credit card that had 5 years, would that improve your length of credit history?
Not right away. And depending on your intention to move forward with your investment or whatever it is you're trying to do, it may hurt you. So I wouldn't close it. I would hold on to it, and depending on when the time frame of what you're trying to do is taking place. But I wouldn't close it. So be careful with paying things off and closing it. Sometimes closing it may not necessarily be a great thing. Okay, so make sure you have an understanding of what that looked like. So the best way to assess that is to go through, write it next to it. Okay, I've had this for 15 years, I've had this for 5 years, I've had this for 7 years. Go through and see. Some of the things that you may want to consider closing are the non-essential credit cards that create debt, such as the store cards, okay? The payday loans. Those are the things you want to take care of, okay? And those are considered the not-so-good debt. Mm-hmm. All right, the 4 types of credit used. Oh, sorry, number 4, types of credit used, so that's 10%. So that's 10% also part of the score, meaning that the type of credit. I always say try to mature into a higher level of credit debt. So perfect example, I'd rather see you have a American Express card, that you are getting points, possibly cash back, whatever that looks like. It's benefiting you in some way. It gives you a really solid, because it's a reputable credit card versus you having a Kohl's credit card versus you having a Home Depot credit card.
By the way, I had a bunch of store credit cards, and I noticed that they closed all of them. And why? Because I don't use them often, and that they had zero on them, so they just go ahead and close them. I go in the store, they're like, that doesn't work anymore. How embarrassing that is. But I'm saying, so I asked once, why you close the card? I didn't tell you to close it. They're like, we have to pay on it, and you're not spending enough so that we can, benefit from it.
Right. Absolutely. Use the mic.
If they close the credit card themselves, does it affect your credit?
Usually they close it after 18 months or so. Some of them have been happening faster now. It doesn't affect you if you have other things to offset it. So perfect example, you may not have been utilizing those store cards, but you may have been utilizing your heavy duty cards like your Discover card, your American Express, and those kind of cards. You may have had a mortgage loan that being paid monthly on time. So there are other things to offset it. But if you don't have a credit established and those are the only things you have, then it will hurt you. It will impact. And that's why I say try to get into, even if it's a low credit amount of $250 that American or Discover card start you with $500 or $1,000, it's best you go that route than for you to go with a store card.
Also, the length of credit history. I noticed that the length that I see on my credit report is the length that I opened my first credit card.
Okay. So go back and look to see if all of those, add them all up, all the credit history, and divide it by the number and see if it meets that. And just calculate it yourself to see. Because sometimes you may see a number there, but when you go and do something and they look at your credit card, they may come up with that median number. And it may not be too far off, maybe by like a year or two. But I would go ahead and add it off.
Like a year. It looks like a year.
Yeah, so sometimes it is, depending on, again, who they're pulling from. Because if I'm a creditor, I may be pulling from Experian, I may be pulling from Equifax, so it depends, okay? One question in the back. Okay, go right ahead.
My question is, would you recommend even like the prepaid cards where like 500 or 1,000 and then working that to build on credit?
Yes, I do. If you do not have an established credit or you're trying to repair your credit, that's an excellent way to go. But again, you have to be responsible with it. And I would say keep that for maybe 6 months to 8 months and then see if you can get into a traditional card. Okay, but that's a great avenue to get you where you need to get. Is it a long-term plan? Absolutely not. But it's a great way to start. It's also a great way to start, especially with someone who has to declare bankruptcy or things like that. It's a great way to kind of make a comeback into, it's a segue. So utilize it as such, a segue. Okay.
So this might be a little bit off track, but it's still in the area. At what point would you suggest, especially for a young person who doesn't have any credit history, doesn't have any credit history, would you recommend, or when would you recommend they consider beginning to open any type of credit?
Okay, so the best way to handle for if you have teenagers or college-age students is to start them off on yours, okay? Start building them on yours, but you have to be honest with yourself. How does your credit look? So you don't want them to have your bad history and your reputation dragging along with them. But if you're in a good place, then you may add them as a signer onto your credit and help them build that way, okay? If not, then they can also start with a prepaid option. Most of the time, if they're at an age, because I know I started with my children young to open their bank accounts, and so if they have a relationship with a bank, right, start them with a bank card. And usually they'll give them like $250. That's also a great way. But the best way is if they can have a parent. One, you can monitor them. Two, you get inquiries and you can see, and that way you can have open dialogue with them to say, hey, I saw that why are you going to art? Did you spend all this money on Chick-fil-A with all your friends? Why are we paying $200 for Chick-fil-A monthly? So you having conversations kind of correct and kind of steer them is the best avenue. But I would start them as soon as possible. And again, talk to them about, especially with the girls, they love the Victoria's Secret cards and the Ulta Beauty and the Bath and Body Works and all those things. Do not let them open those cards just to save $10. It's not worth it. It really isn't. But yeah, start them out. If you can add them as a signer, I think that's the best avenue. If that's not possible based on your circumstance, then I would say if they already have at least 2-3 years built with a relationship with a bank, because they have their own checking account or banking account, then I would go that route as well.
I will second that. That's what my mom did when I was in college. She made me a signer on her Amex. And as far as Amex is concerned, I've been a member with them since 2009. I was not a member at 2009. I was in 9th grade. So,
Yes,
I think that's probably the best way to do that. And it kind of gives you that relationship with the bank as well. And then again, in college, she was able to monitor because it was a card for emergencies and say, why are you spending this on nails and Chinese food? It's not an emergency. And so we were able to have those conversations to set me up a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question. Especially with our young people. One of the things that I saw working in higher education, they have no idea. No idea. I literally just had this conversation with Savannah's my daughter. She's 19. And she's like, Mom, I'm going to get a credit card. I said, literally just this week, I said, why would you want to get a credit card? She doesn't even know she's a signer on my American Express. I haven't given it to her, but I added her and I have it. But she doesn't know that. Well, she will now. YouTube, thanks. But she's like, oh, I'm going to get it. I said, for what? She was like, if you go and you charge, then the government pays for it. I said, who told you that? I said, where did you get that from? She said, no, isn't that how it always works? You just charge and they pay for it. So I'm like, I could just pay for some stuff. And I said, no. No. So she's like, oh, gosh, I'm about to get a lecture. So I had to go through, share my screen, show her my American Express, go through, explain to her the minimum payment, da-da-da-da. And she was like, oh, I have a headache. I can't do this. This is too adulting. But you'll be surprised the information that they have gathered from each other and they think is facts and it's not. So have the conversations and really, start them off as soon as possible. Again, that was a great question, so I love that. Okay. All right, so the types.
It's not only for kids, too. It's for a grown-up that has not started any credit card thing. Yeah.
And because sometimes too, you have people that come into the country, new citizens, or whatever the case is, that just have not established credit, or like I said, starting over, coming out of bankruptcy, or any of those kind of things. I find a lot of women who are coming out of divorce situations, starting over financially. That's a great way to get going. Yes. All right. All right. So the next step, I'm watching the time. 10%. Is the type of credit used. So again, they're looking at the types of credits, whether it's a mortgage loan, student loans, the credit card. So the type of credits play into that. And again, you want to have more mature credit usage for your 10%. You don't want to look at it and it doesn't give you any significant weight. Okay? And recent credit increase. That's a big thing, and I talked about when, perfect example, going to the dealership, not knowing your numbers when you go to a dealership, not having your own loan when you go into a dealership, and they go in, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, what's your credit score? We need to run your credit. That's a hard inquiry. That's going to hit your credit score, and it's going to plummet it really quickly. And not only that, no one should be running your credit report or credit score just to see if they want to do business with you. It's a way to measure up whether or not they want to give poor time into you, if you're worth the time. No one should be doing that. You can look at cars and you can look at things without them running, and they should be able to give you information without them running your credit score.
So in my day job, I work as a consultant for Equifax. And so one thing that I've learned just working there is that even if there's an inquiry and it starts off as a soft inquiry, it can turn into a hard inquiry on your credit report. So if they're gonna do an auto loan and they're gonna run a soft inquiry to see how much you qualify for, and then you pick out the car, eventually that will turn into a hard inquiry. Now, if you get a pre-approval in the mail, that's different. That's a soft inquiry, and then unless you move forward for origination, that's when it turns into a hard inquiry. So understanding the difference between a soft and a hard inquiry too will make a difference.
Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely.
When I got my car, I did not get it from the dealership. I got it through my bank.
Yes, because you have no relationship, right?
Yes. So that made it real easy. I walked in, I'm like, I'm doing my bank. You know, they ask, and I'm like, I'm doing my bank. And they just call my bank, and my bank says yes.
Yes.
And, you know, it was
love
just,
that.
yes.
I love that. That's always the best way, because you already established your relationship. You already know, okay, this is what you can get approved for, versus I find when you go into the dealership, it's usually at least 5 to 6% higher. That's huge. That's it's huge. And so you want to make sure you are saving yourselves. Okay, next slide. I'm going to move through some of these because I know with the respecting your time, I'm just going to talk about some stuff. So just understanding your credit report, right? Some key things on your credit report that I want you to pay attention to. Number one is the personal information. The first page, you're going to see all your information, your name, your address, your telephone numbers, all the things that pour into your identity. Make sure it's correct. People tend to skip through that and think, oh, they have 50 different addresses on here. I don't need to. Go back. Okay, address that, it's fine. I didn't live. Clean that up. Put in a dispute to clean that up, because guess what? If I'm doing business with you and I see that you've lived at 50 different places, I'm going to be leery to do business with you, because guess what? I may not get my money because you may not be in the place that you say you're going to be when I try to reach out to you. You're a risk, If you have names that's not your name, clean it up. Dispute it. I know my last name, Derizio, sometimes they spell it in 50 different ways, and I always clean it up. Because guess what? There's somebody out there. This world is big but small. There's always somebody out there with that name that can tap into, and it leaves room for fraud. So you want to make sure that that information is correct. Sometimes you'll see address. If your address is 1484 and you see like 1482, clean it up. It makes a difference.
You know, one thing I noticed with the address, it depends on where you live. It can make your credit score go up.
Absolutely. It's called red zoning.
Mine went way up when I went to Vegas.
Red zoning, yes. It's a thing. It's also, it's insurance, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Health, home insurance as well. So all of that, but those are things they're not ready to talk about yet, but yes.
I really love this, even though I think I'm financially savvy, because, I'm tight with my money because I work very
That's
hard.
okay, of course.
But knowledge is really power. And sometimes, even though you think you know, just the refresher is key. One of the things we can even finance, we talk about car. I remember refinancing my mortgage. I didn't know I could do that. And I just, like I do every year, I call. And I called them, and I was calling around with one that I already had a mortgage with to bring on another. And I was surprised my mortgage percentage dropped from 5% to 2.5%.
I love it.
2.5.
Yes.
And it wasn't like refinance. I didn't take any money out or anything. 2.5.
Yes.
So knowledge is really, and I have this conversation at work with a lot of young people, and they always run to me like, Miss Cheryl, how you do this? You weren't born here, da-da-da-da. And I tell them, a lot of times it's just be intentional about your money.
Yes.
Be very intentional about your money. I'm sorry. Certain things I see my kids do it, I don't know who their mama is. Because you never get me buy lunch. I'd rather hungry and come home. I'm not buying coffee out there. I'm drinking Verizon free coffee. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just maybe because I'm from a poor background, we had half a quarter chicken sharing for 7 people in the house. Quarter chicken on a
Yes,
Sunday,
On a Sunday.
sharing for 7 people. My sister was getting the leg. How that happened, I don't know what we ate. But you come up and you tell yourself that I don't want to go there, and I don't
wanna
want
go
my
back.
kids to do that.
Yes.
But you said something the last time. Sometimes fear of going back make you hold on to not wanting to spend. But sometimes it helps
It does
because
help.
it does propel you forward. So knowledge is really power, and I love this. This is great.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, because that goes back to last week, like as you said, the mindset. And the mindset is based on your experiences. These children haven't had your experience. And you could talk all day, but they can't relate. They can hear you, understand you, but they can't relate because that was not their experience. They experienced having a full chicken on Sunday. They experienced having chicken on a Wednesday versus in Jamaica, I know chicken was for Sunday. Wednesday was what? Everybody know? Peas? Pea soup or stewed peas?
No, maybe I'm like, I don't know what you guys talking about, because maybe I was rotten. Because seriously, I was
Yes.
the one who was doing the cooking at the home, because I'm
Yeah.
the eldest. So I eat what I want. I decide what is for
Right.
dinner, because my mom is gone to work and my stepdad is gone to work.
Yes.
So now I have what I want, how I want it, and I'm not depriving myself.
Right.
I don't think I should deprive myself. I think I should save, but whatever I want, I just think I should have it.
So that's the balanced mindset. And so you have it, you work for it, and you kind of understand what that looks like, right? But like I said, there's a true fear, and it's internal, not wanting to go back to what it used to be, because that really sat with you somewhere. You know what I mean? And I see it. Mom, we talk about it all the time. I'm like, Mom, you don't need to do that. Be comfortable. She laughs about it all the time, because Daim and I are like, you could be comfortable. You okay? You could be comfortable. You've arrived. She doesn't know she's arrived. And that's okay. Again, it goes back to your own experiences. Okay? All right. So again, the credit accounts, that's also part of your credit report. So you'll see all the credit reports listed, your credit history. This is an area where you're going to pay attention to. This is the meat of it all, right? And so you want to understand the account type, which is whether it's credit card, mortgage, auto loan, whatever that is. Understanding the type, the lender or creditor, it gives you the name of the person that is supporting this debt, right? Account status, very important. Is it open? Is it closed? Is it charged off? If it's open, is it in good status? Is it delinquent? Or do you have a lot of late payments? What does that look like? Okay? The closed accounts, how long has it been closed? If it's more than 7 years or more, you can dispute to have that removed and not sit on your credit report, okay? Charge off, is it charge off with you delinquent owing something, or is it charge off with you actively paying? Actively paying makes a difference, okay? Because that's what's saying to me is that you take responsibility for your debt. And so if you're actively paying, then you can always go back to that borrower, that lender, excuse me, you can go back to that lender and negotiate and say, hey, take me off charge-off status. I'm willing to pay it all in full, especially if you have money that you can pay this in full or make an agreement, okay? But that makes a difference as well. You want to look at the account balances, the current balance of each account, because again, that goes into your what? Utilization, okay? The amount of money that you are using on the account balance, it goes into your utilization. Understand that. Payment history, whether you've made payments on time or not. Again, that's 30%. Was it 35%, excuse me, right? Credit limit or loan amount, the maximum amount of credit or loan balance. You want to understand that because that goes into your credit to debt ratio. So this right here, the details, is the meat of your report. Understand it and dive into it. Don't ignore it, because you ignore it doesn't mean that it's going to go away, okay? Face it and deal with it, all right? And so this is an important part. A lot of the credit card companies, they watch you. And they'll say, okay, they've been paying well, they've been paying, we're going to go ahead and increase. So I find even with Navy Federal, for those who have Navy Federal, they'll bump you up by $5,000 like that. They'll bump you up without you even asking. So pay attention to that, because it may not be to your benefit, because now that's going into your potentially you could go into debt for this extra $5,000. So it plays into your credit to debt ratio. However, it could also benefit you if your utilization is high and then you have an increase. It could balance you out where it gives you that 30%, fall into that 30% of utilization. So look at that carefully, okay? We lost our PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's going to come back again.
Okay. Let me see if I can send. And I'm going to wrap up because I know, like I said, it's been a long evening, and I don't want to keep you all longer. Okay. So the next one is, as he's finding it, is your credit inquiries. Again, we talked about that. Hard inquiry, soft inquiry. The hard inquiries occur when a lender reviews your credit for lending purposes. And so multiple hard inquiries will certainly lower your credit score really quickly. So we want to make sure you understand what that looks like, okay? And then we have soft inquiries, that which occur when someone checking your credit for informational purposes only. However, just like Dahima pointed out, your soft inquiry can turn into a hard inquiry, especially if the loan has been originated, okay? So be careful with that. Public records. Do you have any legal judgments? Do you have any bankruptcies, foreclosures, tax liens? A lot of times people don't know they have tax liens until they're about to sell their homes. A lot of times people don't know they have tax liens until they get a thing in the mail saying your home is about to be auctioned, okay? Pay attention to that. All of these things, you could even set it where it sends you an alert so you can see if any of these things pop up, you will get a notice about it, okay? Because you may not be home, or they may go to one of the various addresses that were listed and serve you a judgment at one of those addresses where you've never lived. And so that's why it's important to make sure you have the correct address and information in the beginning of your report, okay? Next slide. Okay, collections. This is a huge thing. People tend to ignore it. If you have debt in collections, if you have accounts that are in collections and it's turned over to a collection agency, reach out to them, find out who the originator of this debt is, see what you can do to work it out, but have a conversation, do not ignore it. Lately, a lot of things that's on there usually is like medical. Medical debt cannot be on your credit report anymore. Laws have been passed, so you shouldn't see any medical debt. So if so, you can dispute it and have it removed as long as you can show that it's a medical debt, okay? It doesn't mean that the medical debt does not stand. It just means that it's not reported on your credit report, okay? So the medical facility, doctors, they can still come after you for that money. A lot of them are suing at this point, so you want to still address it. You don't want to ignore it. Have a conversation. A lot of times they are willing to work with you. They have the ability to write off up to 40%, depending on how long, how many years the debt has been there, okay? So make sure you're having those conversations. I did list, and you can kind of read through that once you get the slide, but I did list the process of disputing an error. It's really easy. You can do it online, or you can do it on mail. You can print out the forms, complete it, and you really just have to do your due diligence in making sure the document is completed in its entirety and correctly, okay? Making sure you're able to provide any receipts, any bank statements, anything that's gonna support the error, saying that it's an error, support the dispute. And once you send it in, you have to wait patiently. It takes up to 30 days to be investigated and to be resolved, and they will communicate with you what the result of the investigation is, okay? And if it's not in your favor, it does give you an additional step to go ahead and go to another level of dispute, okay? Next slide. Regular monitoring, this is a big thing. You can monitor what's going on in your credit report if you, especially if you do online banking, especially if you sign up for, the different credit bureaus, they can monitor for you. So feel free to make sure you're keeping. If not, and you're not comfortable doing that, check it on a regular basis. You can log in and look and check, but it should be part of your quarterly activity. Okay? He's going to email this out. So okay? All right. Next slide. And I'm moving through because I know the time. Types of good debt and versus bad debt. I wanted you to kind of understand what that looks like, because I know when you are looking at your credit report and handling the collections and the debts and things like that, you're tempted to close out. Be careful with that because it may hurt. The key characteristics of good debt is always low interest rates, low interest rates. I cannot say that enough. We've talked about refinancing, getting lower interest rates. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself. It also builds wealth and appreciation over time. Perfect example, a home. Home increases in value. You always have equity in a home. So you want to make sure that you understand anything that's bringing equity or increasing in appreciation is a form of good debt, okay? That's asset building. Potential long-term benefits. The benefits from good debt often become more apparent in the future. So again, it could be the equity. I use that as an example. Student loans. A lot of times, I'm not taking any student loans, I'm not going to school. But how does that impact your future? If you go to school, get this degree or get this trade or whatever it is that you're going to school for, now you're able to step into a different level of income. Future-wise, it potentially will give you long-term benefits. So student loans could be a good debt. Okay? Any questions there? Yes.
Yes. So, on the topic of student loans,
Sure.
of course, with all that's going on now,
Yes.
there is doubt in people's minds for applying for federal loans. I mean, if they're even available, and more push towards getting private loans, whether it's from Sally Mae or some other company or something like that. Do you have any preference or word of advice one way or the other?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I'm always going to push you to go with the federal loans. The reason why is because you are protected by the different programs that they have. Now we're in a transitional period. No one has answers in terms of what that looks like, and they have different forbearances and deferments and things of that nature, and different repayment plans that you will not receive if you're in a private loan. Typically, the federal government loans are capped at 6.8%, versus a private loan, it depends on your credit and depends on the cosigner. And so you can go up all the way up to about 12%. The last I checked, alternative loans were hitting at about 14%, which is extremely high. And so if there's always an option for you to do a federal subsidized loan, federal unsubsidized loan, or even a federal Parent Plus loan, that is your best way to go, because you are protected under the federal guidelines. I know the current person is trying to dismantle Department of Education, and so the talks are whether or not those loans will be now transitioned to the Treasury Department. And so we don't know what that will look like, but regardless, there's still going to be some mandates on that interest rate. It's not going to reach 14%. You still will have some kind of conversation about the payment options, because they know no one's going to have $60,000 waiting to pay back their student loans. So you have a better chance of having a better plan in terms of when you go into your repayment options, or if you're going to go back to school, it can go into the deferment because you can show that you're a student. It also gives you a better option in terms of, well, right now they have income-based repayment plans, and they have, depending on if you work in the non-for-profit sector, public sector, private, they have different things for that. And I find that a lot of them, if you show that you work in a a needed sector such as nursing, you work in those VA hospitals and things, they can give you 10-year plan. If you're there for the 5 to 7 years, then they can do the forgiveness plans. So you just have more of an option when it's under the federal umbrella versus if you step into the private sector. okay? Private sector, sometimes that loan is variable, it's not fixed. And while you're able to put a lot into it in terms of they'll say, okay, let's calculate tuition, transportation, to it, all the dormitory fees and all the fees, they'll filter that into it, which you can get a large sum, but that large sum has a large interest attached to it. So I'm always going to say, if you can fall under that federal umbrella, stay under there until we know what's happening, but
And
yeah.
even if they don't have like the income-driven repayment
Mm-hmm.
plan, it's still better to use the federal
Yes.
plans as opposed to private.
Yes.
Because then the interest is going to be lower in
Mm-hmm.
those cases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And even with that too, there's some options to consolidate, to kind of pull them all together, depending on the type of loans that you have. So I'm always going to say go under the federal guidelines. Okay. All right. Any questions about good debt? We understand what good debt looks like. All right. Let's go on to the bad debt, and we're going to wrap you up in 5 minutes. Okay. So the characteristics of bad debt: high interest rate. And this usually costs you more over time. And we talked about even with credit cards, right? With auto loans and personal loans, the payday loans, they are like gougers to the gut. Like anything that has a high interest rate where you feel like you just cannot breathe, it's a bad debt, okay? And initially it may solve your problem for the right now, but next week, it's going to be a huge problem. So a lot of people, I don't understand why people go to payday, but again, people are in survival mode. But the payday loans, I just wish somebody will make it illegal, because it is really a horrible thing for people. It's like you can't get out of it. It's like a loan shark. You just can't seem to move. So be careful with those things. So bad debt, again, does not generate value, right? Provides no return on your investment, none. And so auto loans, you go get a brand new car, looking nice and shiny, and you drive off the lot. The minute you drive off the lot, it depreciates. Okay? Think about when you have a loan payment, auto loan payment for what, 5, 7, 8 years sometimes. By the time you get to year 8, your car broke down. Like seriously, it's old, the tires, there's certain things you're like, man, I'm still paying on this car like it was brand new. But it's not. So be careful with that. And it leads to financial strain. It leads to serious financial trouble if not managed carefully. And so again, it's like it's like a little pebble, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger till you're out of control with it. Anything that's going to make you feel uneasy, just know it's not good, and rethink it. I know it solves your problem for today, but think about tomorrow, what problems you're going to get from that, okay? So I urge you to be careful with these credit card debts, these personal loans, the auto loans. If you have a car, hold on to your car. Hold on to your car. I can't even stress that enough. The payday loans, don't even do it. Find another mean, okay? All right, next one. It's getting hot in here. I wanted to hit the strategy for paying off debt. This is the most popular strategy, which is the snowball method. And when you list out your debt, you're going to arrange them from smallest balance to the largest balance, regardless of interest rate. And a lot of times people use the snowball method because it's very motivational, because you see results. And as you've seen results, it keeps you consistent. Because sometimes, some people need that mental motivation to keep going, and this allows you to do so. So you're going to list your debt, like I said, from smallest to largest. You start paying off the first one, right, while you're still making your minimum payments on the others, right? And by the time you finish paying off the small one, then you move to the next debt. However, The money that you say you were putting $50 on the smallest one. Don't think you have $50 to go to the movies every Friday, right? Every Saturday night you're going out to eat with the $50. No, you're going to take that 50 and add it to the next. So even if you were paying $40 minimum to the next one, now that $50, you should be paying $90 to the next one, okay? Hence what is called the snowball method. It's a revolving thing here. Like, you know, when you build a snowball and you roll it in the snow and it just keeps going, that's what it is. So you building momentum, you pay each debt the amount you were paying towards the previous debt to free up the next card or the next debt. Make sense? Is that something doable? Yes, it is. Okay. All right, good, good. Yeah, that's what you're going to do? Good. It works. I kid you not, it works. Now, it takes time, so you have to be patient and you have to plan it out. And the way to do that is to understand what those minimum payments are and divide it into the balance that is owed, so you know this is how many months it's going to take you to do so, you know, until you're able to get your footing. So it does take some time. It's a longer way. However, it works if you are consistent and really just hone in on the goal, okay? All right, the next debt, okay, the avalanche method. This is another one. Again, it's for those who are a little bit more structured. I think I have a structured personality, so I think this pretty much works for me. But if you have to, and that's why I say you have to know yourself. If you're not structured or with a partner that is not as structured, but one may be structured, you all want to have that conversation, right? So the avalanche method, same method, you're going to list your debts. Instead of by smallest to largest, you're listing according to the highest interest to the lowest interest. So you're tackling it based off of interest, all right? And so you're paying off the one with the highest interest first. It's pretty much the same thing. You're taking that money, moving it to the next. So it's similar to the snowball, except for you're handling it based off the highest interest to the lowest interest. Now, once you have tackled the highest interest first, you minimize the amount of interest you pay over time. And that's the idea, is that you're saving money, because remember, these debtors, they're making money based off that interest. So if you're tackling that highest interest one, you're saving money in the long term because you don't have all those added interest payments, okay? But again, this is faster. However, don't try to be swift if this is not your personality. Be true to yourself. If this doesn't work for you and this is not your personality and this is too structured, don't even do it, because you're not going to follow through. And we want you to set yourself up for success, okay? Any questions about this one? Okay, so those are the two that I want you to really hone in on to see how you can tackle the debt. Next slide. Okay, homework. Ding, 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 ding. Homework. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, I'm never going to take this off. You're always going to write your 5 dreams, turn dreams into your goals, because I want you to see it as much as possible, because that's what's going to keep you grounded and consistent. See your goals. Understand why you are doing this. Okay? If you have to take a picture of that house and put it up on that fridge and put it up on that front door, do what you need to do to keep consistent in following through with your dream. Okay? Now you're going to create your debt payment plan. Now, last week you know your credit score, you've pulled your credit report, you're going to go through your credit report and understand what the credit debt is, and you're going to create your payment plan based on what I've said, one of the two. All right? You're also going to go through to the collections area. You're going to dispute and contact collections to come up with a payment agreement. Do not ignore those. The goal is to fix your credit report and to also increase your credit score, because we have plans, okay? We have things that we want to do that we need this to be in the right space, right? Yes? Okay. Okay, good. So we're going to do this homework, right? Yes? Okay, awesome. Next. All right. Next session, session 3, we're going to talk about banking, saving and building emergency funds, how to bank responsibly. So the purpose of an emergency fund, how to save, short-term versus long-term savings, strategies and automatic savings, understand the different types of savings accounts, such as high-yield savings, CDs, etc. We're going to dive more into the investment of it all. Is that okay? So hopefully you'll be ready because now you understand that you're tackling your debt. You understand how you're going to get this additional funds to start pouring into your emergency funds and things like that we're going to talk about. Okay? Next. All right. Dear debt, it's about time we broke up. It's you, not me. Thank you. Yes. So break up with that debt. You know, break up. Mush it up. All right. Thank you all for your time. I know we went over, but I promise you we'll try to be a little bit more punctual next time. And, you know, hopefully this was helpful. Okay?
Yes, it was. Can we all put our hands together one more time for Sister Alexia? Thank you.